Good morning, roasters. Thanks for joining me today for this screencast. We're going to take a little break from the Roasting with Roastmaster series. I do have more screencasts planned for the future, but I want to cover some other areas of Roastmaster that you may or may not be somewhat familiar with. You'll have to forgive my voice. Spring has officially sprung here in the Northeast, and the pollinating trees are wreaking havoc on my snout. No amount of Claritin is helping me, but we're going to barrel on, and today we're talking about blends. Now, you've probably understood their function. There's nothing mystical about the blends feature of Roastmaster. You simply create one and assign different items and percentages, and you have a record of that particular blend. But if you're a newcomer or you want to learn about some of the more advanced features of blends, then keep watching and we'll cover those here. So let's navigate to the blend section. This is our blends library where all of the blends are stored in Roastmaster. And it's currently empty, of course, but we're going to fix that by tapping the plus button at the bottom and create a new blend. Now, the first thing we want to do is give this blend a name. So we'll tap on the name field and we'll call this espresso. The next thing we want to do is tell Roastmaster how we want to calculate this blend. We can choose weight, where we enter actual weight values like grams or pounds or ounces, or we can choose percentages, where we specify certain percentages like 50 or 60%. And that's what we're going to do here, so we'll leave it set on percentage. And finally, we want to tell Roastmaster the actual items that we're blending. And we do that by tapping Add Item and then choose an item. Now, when you work with blends in Roastmaster, you can choose to use either green beans or actual roasts as the components of those blends. Personally, I like to use roasts because most of the time I will post blend, and by that I mean I will roast each individual component separately to a specific roast degree or with a specific roast profile, and then blend the roasts later. So this gives me a permanent record of how each individual component should be prepared in order to get the taste that I'm after. So let's tap roasts. And for the first component of this blend, we're going to choose this Brazilian Santos. And we'll give it a nice round percentage of 50% and tap Save. Then we'll tap Add Item again and choose our second component, and that will be our Ethiopian here. We'll give this a percentage of, say, 30 and tap Save. Finally, we will add a third and final component and choose our Costa Rican Tarrazu. And a percentage is 20 and tap Save. So we can see here that our total percentage is in fact 100 and that our math was correct. And we're done defining this blend, so we can tap Save. And now it is saved to our blends library. So since we have chosen to use roasts as components in this blend, at any point in time in the future, if we want to reference those roasts and see exactly how to duplicate the taste of this blend, we can use these little informational buttons here next to each component and navigate right to the roast and have a record of the profile we used, as well as the temperature curves, and also the roast degree that we roasted it to. Now, here in this blend details view, we have a number of toolbar buttons along the bottom. These let us perform specific functions related to this blend. The first one here is the analyzer button. Now, we haven't roasted this blend yet, but if we had, then we'd be able to tap this button and see the full screen roast analyzer. And it would contain every roast that we've ever done of this blend. We'd be able to swipe along the bottom to pan through them and see all the good details like their data curves and profile, and crack and other milestone information. Next here we have the Create Roast button. Tapping this will create a brand new roast with this blend already filled in as a roasted item. All that we need to do is set the amount and choose our profile and start it. Next up we have the Create Cupping button. Tapping this will create a brand new cupping, and again our cupped item will be filled in for us. All that we really need to do is fill in other information if we're tracking that. I personally don't. Most of my cuppings are traditional SEA cuppings, so I would just begin evaluation. Now we'll skip over the snapshot button here for a moment. Next in line though is the Print Labels button. We can tap this and generate a set of labels and send them directly to an AirPrint printer for printing, or upload them to Dropbox or iCloud Drive, or send them as an email attachment, whatever we need to do with them. Moving on, we have the Actions menu. Tapping this guy gives us a list of actions that A, either didn't fit on the toolbar comfortably, or B, could benefit from a little textual explanation as to their function. One of those here is the bean components yield. So we'll tap that, and Roastmaster gives us a handy little blend calculator where we can type in a desired yield. Let's say we want 50 pounds of this blend, and it will calculate for us the individual component weights that we need to achieve that yield weight. And the last button on the right is the sharing button. If we tap this, then we can choose any one of a number of type of export formats for this particular blend, where we can share details about it on a social network, or export a tab delimited text file, or an XML file. Now let's go back and look at this snapshot button. Roastmaster allows you to make snapshot copies of a blend. And when you do this, you are free to edit the snapshot independently of the master that it came from, but the two remain logically grouped together. So to give an example of this, let's assume that this espresso blend has never been tested by us. So we've decided that we want these three components in this blend and we think it will give a good taste, but we haven't actually tested it or cupped it yet to see if these percentages will work or if there may be a better alternative. And snapshots can help us figure this out. So let's tap the snapshot button here and choose Create Snapshot. Now what's happened here is that Roastmaster has indeed created us a snapshot copy of our blend with the same components and percentages as the master that created this, but it is now its own independent entity and we can edit it separately. Now we know it's a snapshot by the icon here in the upper left corner, and we can also look and see that the blends list item has changed as well. We get a folder icon for the blend, signifying that it contains snapshots, and we also have a navigation button now, letting us tap this button and navigate to the snapshots contained in that master. At the moment, of course, we only have one, and that's the snapshot that we're currently viewing in the details pane, but we're going to make a couple here and play around with these percentages and see what we come up with. So let's put the snapshot that we just made into edit mode and tap on our Brazilian Santos here and put this into edit mode, and we'll change this percentage here to 60%. And tap done and navigate back. And we can see now that the total percentage is showing in red, indicating that we are not at 100% as we should be, but we'll fix that. In this one, I'm going to keep the Ethiopian the same and just cut down on the Costa Rican here, which is probably going to be a lot for this blend anyway. So we'll change that down to 10, tap done, and navigate back, and we can see we're back at 100%. So let's call this one finished. Now we're going to create one more snapshot, and that will give us 3 blends total. We'll have the original master blend with our initial guesstimates, and we'll have the snapshot we just created here with a variation, and we want one more variation. Now we can do this one of two ways. Here in the details view of our first snapshot, we can tap the snapshots button in the toolbar, and that will take the details of this snapshot and apply it to a new sister snapshot. In other words, a sibling snapshot belonging to the same master. But if we want to start off on the snapshot with the details of our master instead, then we can just tap the plus button here in the existing snapshots list, and that will also create a new sibling snapshot, but this time we'll be using the details of the master. And for the percentages on this one, I'm going to do the same thing with our Costa Rican. I'm going to set it to 10%. But this time, bump up our Ethiopian. And we'll use 40%. And that looks good, so we'll tap save. So now we can see we have our two snapshots, and each one has different blend percentages. And if we navigate back to our master blend, we can see a different set of percentages there as well. Now, before we actually cup these, it's probably a good idea to give them unique names so that we can identify them on the cupping table. Now, our master here is fine. We'll keep that as espresso, and we'll navigate to our snapshots, and we'll rename the first one here. We'll call it Espresso 2. And then our second one we'll call Espresso 3. And we are ready to cup. At this point, we could easily create the cuppings here by tapping the cupping button in the details view of each of these blends. But I want to show you something unique about snapshots and their flexibility in Roastmaster. So let's navigate to the cupping section and create them manually by tapping the plus button here in our cuppings library and choosing add item, then choose an item and switching to blends and selecting our master blend. We'll tap save and save again, and then we'll keep going for our other two blends. Now here we want to navigate to this blend snapshots, and we do that by tapping the little accessory button here and selecting our first snapshot. And we'll do the same for our second snapshot. And we're ready. And once the table's prepared and our samples are ground and laid out, we're ready to begin evaluation. We could individually edit each cupping and enter scores with a numerical keypad, but what we want to do here is cup them all together as a flight. So we'll put our cupping library into edit mode and then select each sample in the order we laid them out on the cupping table and tap the cup flight button. Now we're not going to get crazy with the scoring. This, after all, is just an example. I'm going to give them some dummy data by tapping and dragging on each attribute and assigning them scores. And I think for this one, we'll go down on the flavor a bit and navigate to the next sample and do the same here. But this one I will leave at a fictitious perfect score. And finally, the third sample, we'll say that the acidity is not what we want in this sample and give perfect scores for the rest. And we're done. Now we'll just dismiss this spider graph flight view. So we can see in our list here that Espresso 2 is our winner with a perfect score of 100. And let's navigate back to the blends and I'll show you how to organize snapshots. Then we'll navigate to our snapshots and select the winner here, Espresso 2. And we can scroll down to the cuppings and see that this in fact was the one with the perfect score. And what we want to do at this point is to make this the master blend, so that whenever we reference this item in any other area of Roastmaster, it is the primary choice, it appears first in the list, and we can understand by that prominence that this is our winner. And to accomplish this, all we need to do is tap the snapshot button and choose Promote to Master. Now what's happened here is that Roastmaster has taken this winning blend and promoted it to the master position, and it has taken the original master and demoted it to a snapshot position. So if we select the snapshot that used to be our master, we can see, of course, that the name is the original espresso, and that these percentages are the original ones we entered, and that it was one of the ones with the not perfect cupping score. And if we navigate back to the master, we can see that it is indeed now Espresso 2 with our modified percentages and the perfect cupping score. Now at this point, simply because I like things nice and tidy, I'm going to go ahead and delete these two snapshots that we don't need any longer. I'll put this table into edit mode, select both of these guys, and tap the delete button. Now Roastmaster is warning us that we're going to be deleting snapshots that are used in cuppings here, and that's fine. We're going to delete those in a second, so we'll OK the delete and navigate back to our cuppings. And the only one we want to keep here is Espresso 2, and delete those. And I think I'm going to edit the name here and change it to Espresso Final. And there is our completed approved blend. Now, as we use this blend, it's bound to change over time. Bean crops, bean tastes, supply, prices, they're all going to change. So we'll probably find ourselves in the future, as this happens, making new snapshots and then tweaking the details a little bit. Or we may even substitute completely different green origins for the ones we have here, depending on what we need to do to keep this taste in line with what we're after. And what we may end up with in the future is a list that looks something like this, where as time has passed, we've created different snapshots with not only varying percentages, but also varying origins. And all of this in an effort to keep the brand taste of this particular blend. Well, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this screencast and that you're coming away with some knowledge that you can apply to your own workflow about Roastmaster's blending features and how to use them to track changes over time. Please keep an eye out for future screencasts. We've got a bunch planned, and as always, they will be geared to helping you get the most out of Roastmaster.